Captain Auric Hale had spent another long day inside his quarters on the ship Aurora's Light. The silver walls of the ship hummed softly, filled with the sound of energy currents running through the panels. Outside, the blackness of space spread forever, dotted with stars like cold diamonds. The ship floated near the Arindra system, where tall crystalline cities shone on blue worlds below. It was a place of beauty and politics, where humans were still seen as newcomers among ancient alien powers. Auric was one of the few humans trusted to represent Earth. He was a soldier once, a commander during the border wars. Now he was a diplomat, calm, respectful, but always ready to defend his people if needed. The Arindran court had sent 2 royal attendants to serve him as a gesture of peace. They called them maids, but their true duty was more than that. They were observers trained to watch how humans behaved, how they lived, how they thought. The 2 attendants, Lysera and Vina, came from noble bloodlines. Their world valued control, grace, and perfection. They walked softly, spoke gently, and never acted without purpose. When they first saw the human captain, they were unsure what to think. He was tall, strong, and had sharp blue eyes that seemed to see through everything. Yet his room was nothing like a royal chamber. It was filled with old tools, open devices, half-built machines, and scattered paper reports. Lysera had whispered to Vina once, "He lives like a worker, not like a commander." Vina nodded, watching from the corner. Humans are strange. They do not fear disorder, yet they always find meaning in it. For days they worked silently, cleaning, organizing, and learning the rhythms of their human guest. Auric often thanked them, though he rarely slept. At night he stayed awake, fixing the damaged translator module or reading reports from the outer colonies. He barely ate and sometimes fell asleep on his desk, surrounded by glowing screens and blinking lights. That night the ship drifted in quiet motion through the cold of space. The corridors were empty, the lights dimmed to night mode. Lysera and Vina rested in their shared quarters down the hall. Suddenly, a soft alarm echoed through their communication bands, a power drop alert in the captain's section. It was not strong enough to wake the whole crew, but to the attendants it meant something could be wrong. Lysera sat up immediately. The captain's room lost half its power. Vina blinked sleepily. "Should we call maintenance?" "No," Lysera said quickly. "He could be in danger. We must go." They walked through the quiet hallway, their light blue robes brushing against the metal floor. When they reached his door, the emergency light above it flickered red. Lysera pressed her wristband to the control panel and the door slid open with a slow hiss. Inside, the room was dark, except for a single lamp casting soft light over the desk. Papers lay scattered across the floor. A small holographic map of a star cluster flickered weakly in the air. On the ground near the table, Captain Auric lay still, his arm stretched toward a broken device. Lysera gasped. "He's down!" She rushed forward, kneeling beside him. Vina hesitated at the door, unsure if entering a superior's personal space without permission was allowed, but Lysera didn't stop to think. She gently touched the side of his neck, searching for a pulse the way she had learned in medical training. His skin was warm, his breathing steady. Relief washed through her. "He's alive, just exhausted." Vina slowly stepped closer, her eyes wide with worry. He works even in his rest cycle. No wonder his body failed him. Lysera looked around the messy desk. He was building something. She picked up a small half-assembled device, a translator node, one that allowed humans to understand over 100 alien languages instantly. The captain had clearly been trying to fix it by himself. Auric's eyelids moved slightly. His fingers twitched. Then he opened his eyes, blinking in confusion. For a moment, he didn't know where he was. His gaze landed on the 2 alien attendants kneeling beside him, their silver blue skin glowing faintly under the dim light, their eyes filled with concern. "What?" he muttered softly. "What happened?" Lysera lowered her head quickly. "Forgive us, Captain. The power dropped in your room. We feared you were hurt. We entered without your call." Auric slowly sat up, rubbing his forehead. His voice was weak but calm. "You entered. To help me?" "Yes," Vina said quietly. "We thought something had happened." For a moment there was silence. Then unexpectedly Auric smiled. It was small, tired, but genuine. "Then you did the right thing." The words caught both women by surprise. In their culture, servants who entered without permission could face severe punishment, even dismissal. Yet the human had thanked them. No anger, no orders. Only gratitude. Lysera felt her chest tighten with something she couldn't explain. You are not angry? Arik shook his head. Why would I be angry? You followed your instincts. That's what saves lives. He leaned back against the wall, breathing slowly. I've been pushing too hard. Guess my body decided to remind me I'm still human? He chuckled softly, though his voice was faint. Vina, uncertain but moved, offered a glass of water from the nearby table. Arik took it and drank carefully. Thank you, he said again. You're both braver than most soldiers I've served with. They didn't know what to say. In the Irindran hierarchy, praise from a superior was rare. From a human, it was almost unthinkable. Lysera finally spoke, her tone softer now. Captain, your world, it must be different. You treat even attendants with respect. Arik smiled faintly. Where I come from, we're all just people doing our best. Titles don't matter much when you've seen war. For a while, no one moved. The lamp buzzed quietly, filling the room with a warm hum. Lysera stood and began organizing the papers, placing them neatly on the desk. Vina fixed the small power unit, restoring the light's brightness. Arik tried to protest, saying they didn't need to, but they ignored him, their movements calm and careful. When they finally left the room, the human captain was asleep again, this time on his bed, not the floor. Lysera turned to look at him one last time before the door closed. Back in their quarters, Vina spoke first. He thanked us. A human captain. Thanked us. Lysera nodded slowly, her eyes thoughtful. Maybe humans are not what the elders say. He is different. His heart speaks before his rank. By morning, rumors had spread through the ship. Some said the human captain had collapsed after working for 70 hours straight. Others said 2 Irindran attendants had saved him. The details changed with every telling, but one truth remained. The human had shown gratitude and kindness, even when he was the one in need. Among the alien crew, that story began to travel, whispered in corridors, repeated in the dining hall. The Irindran staff, once proud and distant, began to look at the human officer with quiet respect. He was not like the others they had imagined. He was humble, disciplined, and strangely gentle for a species known as Deathworlders. Lysera watched him from afar during her duties that day. She saw how he greeted the engineers, how he smiled at even the smallest workers, how he shared his food with the crew. And she thought to herself that maybe, just maybe, this alliance between humans and her people had a chance, because behind every strong order and command, there was a heart that still cared. That night, as the stars drifted past the ship's windows, the memory of that moment, the quiet room, the faint light, the unexpected act of kindness, stayed in her mind. It was the night when they had found their captain unprepared, but discovered something far greater than protocol. They had found the human side of strength. The next morning, the ship Aurora's light came alive with soft mechanical sounds as systems woke for the day. The hallways glowed with pale light, and voices of different species filled the air. Captain Arik Hale rose early, though his body still felt heavy from exhaustion. He had barely remembered falling asleep, but now he stood by the window, watching the blue light of the Irindra system reflect on the ship's hull. He thought about the night before. The memory made him smile faintly. 2 royal attendants entering his room at night, not out of disobedience but out of worry. He could still remember Lysera's nervous expression and Vina's careful tone. They had risked punishment just to make sure he was safe. That simple act of care touched something deep inside him. While he dressed and prepared for the day, a call came through his communicator. The voice of Commander Dren, the Irindran overseer, sounded sharp. Captain Hale, the royal attendants under your charge are to appear before the Council of Conduct. They have breached royal protocol. Arik frowned. For saving me? Protocol was broken. The council meets in 1 hour. The call ended before Arik could reply. He stood still for a moment, looking at the empty cup on his desk. He had seen injustice before, and during wars, during peace meetings, and systems where power mattered more than fairness. But he would not allow this one. Not when kindness was being punished. When the hour came, the council hall shimmered with gold light and crystal seats. The alien nobles of Irindra stood tall, their robes flowing like waves of water. At the center of the room stood Lysera and Vina, their heads bowed. Neither dared to look up. Around them, whispers filled the air. The chief overseer spoke coldly. You entered a human officer's chamber during the night without summons or command. You violated royal boundaries, Lysra tried to explain. There was a power drop. We feared for his safety, but she was interrupted. Excuses do not change the rules, the overseer said. Before another word could be spoken, the chamber doors opened, and Captain Arik Hale walked in. The guards at the entrance stepped aside. The sound of his boots echoed as he walked forward, stopping between the two attendants and the council. His presence drew attention immediately. Humans were not common here, and a human who dared interrupt a royal council was unheard of. Arik bowed briefly. If you're going to pass judgment, he said calmly, then it should include me. The overseer frowned. You are not the one accused, Captain. Then you should be, Arik said, his tone steady but sharp. Because it was my condition that made them act. If I had taken better care of myself, they would not have worried. If they are to be punished, then I should be too. A wave of murmurs moved through the council. One elder spoke. You defend your attendants? Arik nodded. They saw danger and acted. On my world, that's called courage. His words hung in the air. Even the translator paused for a moment as the meaning carried through. The Arindrans, proud and bound by order, had never seen someone take responsibility for those below him, especially not for servants. But there was something in the human's voice that made them listen. Lysra finally looked up, her eyes wide with disbelief. She had expected silence, not protection. Vina's hands trembled slightly at her side. The overseer tried to recover control. You speak boldly, human, but our traditions... Arik interrupted gently. Traditions are meant to guide, not to blind. These two acted from loyalty, not rebellion. If your code cannot see that, then maybe it is not as perfect as you believe. The room fell silent again. The counselors exchanged uncertain glances. After a long pause, the eldest among them, an ancient Arindran with silver skin and bright violet eyes, finally spoke. Perhaps wisdom lies not in punishing loyalty. Let this matter rest. A soft wave of light rippled across the council's seats, a sign of agreement. The overseer bowed reluctantly. The case is closed. The attendants are free of charges. Lysra let out a slow breath she didn't realize she had been holding. Arik turned slightly toward them and smiled. Let's get back to work, he said quietly. When they left the hall, the two attendants walked behind him silently. Finally, Vina spoke, her voice trembling a little. You stood for us before the royal council. No one has ever done that. Arik looked over his shoulder. That's what leaders should do. You don't turn your back on people who help you. Lysra met his eyes. Our people say humans act first and think later, but you think with your heart before your rank. Arik chuckled softly. Then maybe your people are learning the right things about mine. In the days that followed, the mood on Aurora's light changed. The alien crew began to greet the human captain with more warmth. They saw how he worked alongside engineers, how he shared meals with the lower staff, and how he never demanded respect. He earned it. Lysra and Vina became trusted aides, not just attendants. They worked beside him during long meetings, translating alien data, organizing reports, and helping to improve communication systems. They were no longer afraid to speak openly with him. One evening, after a long day of diplomatic talks, the ship entered orbit above a quiet moon. Arik stood by the observation window, staring at the glowing horizon. Lysra approached slowly, holding a small metal object, the translator device he had once been fixing. It's finished, she said. We repaired it together. He took it, turning it in his hands. The surface shimmered faintly, perfectly reassembled. You did this? Vina helped, she said. We learned from your notes, Arik smiled. You're faster learners than most humans I've trained. Lysra hesitated, then spoke softly. Captain, that night, when we entered your room, we thought we had made a terrible mistake, but it became something else. It made us see you and your people differently. Arik nodded slowly. And it made me see your people differently too. I used to think the Arindrans were cold, ruled only by rules, but that night proved there's kindness beneath your discipline. For a moment, neither spoke. Outside, a comet passed across the sky, its trail glowing softly. The reflection lit both their faces, human and alien, standing side by side. Then Vina joined them, carrying a tray of steaming drinks. For peace, she said with a shy smile. A new tradition between our worlds, Arik raised his cup. To peace, and to those who keep it alive. They stood together, sharing quiet laughter and stories about their worlds. Lysira told him about the crystal gardens of Arindra, where light could be sung into color. Arik spoke of Earth's oceans, vast and blue, where storms danced with lightning and courage meant facing the waves. Time passed and the bond between them grew, not of rank, but of understanding. Word of their friendship reached even the royal court, surprising many. Some called it unusual, others called it impossible. But for those aboard Aurora's Light, it became a symbol of what cooperation could mean. Months later, when the ship prepared to leave the Arindra system, Lysira and Vina stood at the docking bay to see Arik off. The human mission was complete, and a new trade pact between their species had been signed. Lysira stepped forward and bowed lightly. "Captain Hale, thank you for believing in us when no one else did." Arik smiled warmly. "You two reminded me why humanity fights for peace. It's because of people like you." As he walked toward the shuttle, the two attendants watched in silence. The engines hummed softly and the door closed. The ship lifted away, leaving behind trails of silver light. Vina whispered, "He came to our world a stranger. He leaves as a bridge between stars." Lysira nodded, her eyes reflecting the glow of departing engines. "That night we found him unprepared, but it was us who were unprepared for how much one human could change us." And somewhere beyond the horizon, Aurora's Light carried not just treaties or data, but the quiet story of that night, when two alien maids entered a human's room to help him, and instead found the beginning of true friendship between worlds.